In the fading light of a late autumn afternoon, Emily Carter stood at the edge of Brooksville, her hands clenched tightly around the worn strap of her bag. The neighborhood stretched before her, a scattering of weathered houses and cracked sidewalks, the kind of place where hopes often seemed as fragile as the peeling paint on the front doors. Here, in the run-down outskirts, Emily had decided to make her stand. 6 months pregnant and alone, she was determined to provide a home for the child growing inside her, even if that meant braving the skepticism of a community that had long since stopped expecting anything new or hopeful from their corner of the world. The shack she had just purchased sat crookedly among the weeds and overgrown brush. Its wooden boards faded to a dull gray, and its roof sagging under the weight of years. It had been listed online for a mere $100, a price so low that even the local real estate agent had shrugged when Emily called. "It's a wreck," he had warned, "not fit for living." But to Emily, it was more than just a pile of battered wood and rusted nails. It was a chance, a fragile, flickering opportunity to build something real. Before we continue, make sure to like and subscribe to never miss a new video. And tell me, where are you watching this video from? I love seeing all different people come together for these stories. Her neighbors watched with thinly veiled amusement as she approached the shack. Mrs. Delaney, who lived 2 doors down in a house that had seen better days but still boasted a manicured lawn, shook her head with a disapproving sigh. "You're crazy, Emily," she muttered under her breath. "That place isn't a home. It's a death trap." Across the street, a group of teenagers lounged on their porch steps, casting sideways glances and snickers her way. "What's she doing buying that dump?" one of them whispered, loud enough for Emily to catch. "Gonna have that baby in a shack?" The words stung, but Emily swallowed her pride. She had heard worse in the past few months since her relationship with Michael ended, leaving her to face the daunting reality of single motherhood alone. The eviction notice pinned to her apartment door 2 weeks ago had been the final blow, forcing her to scramble for shelter and stability before the baby arrived. She had no family nearby, no friends with room to spare. The shack was her last hope. With a deep breath, Emily stepped onto the uneven porch, the wood groaning beneath her weight. The door hung loosely on its hinges, and as she pushed it open, a musty smell, equal parts damp earth and forgotten memories, washed over her. Inside, the small space was dim and cluttered with debris, broken furniture, shards of glass, and what looked like old newspapers yellowed with age. Dust motes floated in the fading light, drifting lazily through the air like tiny ghosts of the past. Emily's heart pounded as she set down her bags and looked around. The shack was cold, drafty, and barely standing, but it held a strange kind of promise. She imagined painting the walls a soft cream, hanging curtains that fluttered in the summer breeze, and setting up a cradle by the window where the morning sun would warm her baby's face. It was a vision born of desperation and hope, fragile yet fiercely real. That night, as the wind howled outside and the temperature dropped, Emily curled up on a threadbare blanket she had found in the corner. The creaks and groans of the shack's settling were a constant reminder of its precariousness, but she clung to the warmth growing within her belly, the steady kicks and movements of the life she was bringing into the world. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of cold floors and empty rooms, but also by flashes of a future where this shack was no longer a symbol of struggle, but a home filled with laughter and light. In the days that followed, Emily faced a steady stream of challenges. Neighbors whispered behind her back, casting doubtful glances as she worked tirelessly to clean and repair the shack with whatever tools and supplies she could scrounge together. The local hardware store owner, Mr. Jenkins, eyed her with a mixture of pity and curiosity when she asked for nails and paint. "You sure you want to fix that old place up?" he asked one morning, handing her a small box of screws. "Might be better off just moving somewhere else." But Emily shook her head, her resolve hardening with each passing day. She had nowhere else to go, no family to turn to, and no savings left after paying for the shack. Every dollar was stretched thin, every effort painstaking. Yet she found small victories in the transformation: the first coat of paint on the cracked walls, the patching of a leaky roof, the clearing of the overgrown yard. With each repaired board and scrubbed surface, the shack began to feel less like a ruin and more like a shelter. Evenings were the hardest. The isolation pressed in around her, the quiet broken only by the occasional bark of a distant dog or the rustling of leaves in the wind. She missed the hum of city life, the comfort of familiar faces, and the warmth of Michael's arms. But mostly, she missed feeling safe and secure. Still, each night as she lay on her makeshift bed, the baby's gentle kicks were a reminder that she was not alone. One afternoon, as Emily painted the front steps, a figure approached hesitantly from down the street. It was Mr. Thompson, a local handyman known for his gruff demeanor and reluctant generosity. He stopped a few feet away, watching her work with narrowed eyes. "You really gonna live here?" he asked, voice rough but not unkind. Emily wiped the sweat from her brow and nodded. "I have to. There's no other place." He studied the shack and then looked back at her. "It's a mess. You'll need a lot more than paint and nails to make it safe." "I know," she admitted, "but it's a start." Mr. Thompson sighed, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small bundle of tools. "I've got some spare wood and a few hours free this weekend. If you want, I'll help you shore it up." Emily's heart lifted at the offer. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot." Word of Emily's determination began to spread through the neighborhood, stirring a mix of skepticism and reluctant admiration. Some still whispered that she was foolhardy, that the shack would never be a home, especially for a child. But others, like Mr. Thompson, started to see her not as a lost cause, but as a woman fighting against the odds. As the weeks passed, Emily's routine became a rhythm of hard work and quiet hope. She rose early to clean and repair, rested when she could, and spent evenings planning the future she dreamed of. A future where her child would grow up safe, loved, and free from the hardships that had marked her own young life. One chilly morning, as frost glazed the cracked windows, Emily paused on the porch, cradling her growing belly. The shack still needed a great deal of work: insulation, plumbing, proper heating. But it was standing. It was hers. And despite the doubts and discouragement, she believed with every fiber of her being that this crooked little shack on the edge of Brooksville could become a home. The baby stirred inside her, a small kick against her palm, and Emily smiled through the cold. Tomorrow was another day, another chance to build something new from the fragments of the past. And she was ready. The morning sun filtered weakly through the thin curtains Emily had managed to hang across the shack's sole window, casting a pale glow on the dust-coated floorboards. The previous night's chill still lingered in the air, and as she moved cautiously through the cramped space, the creaks and groans of the old shack greeted her like familiar, if unsettling, companions. She wrapped her arms around her swollen belly, feeling the steady rhythm of her baby's movements, a quiet reassurance amidst the uncertainty. Her fingers brushed against something unusual beneath the threadbare rug near the wall, a slight bulge beneath the floorboards. Curiosity piqued, Emily knelt down, the cold seeping through her jeans as she carefully lifted the rug aside. The wood beneath was warped and splintered, but in the corner, a small, rusted metal latch peeked from the grime. Heart quickening, she worked her fingers into the crevice, prying at the latch until it clicked open with a reluctant groan. Beneath the lifted floorboard lay a chest, its surface thick with dust and cobwebs, as if untouched for decades. The wood was dark and weathered, its iron bands rusted but still sturdy. Emily's breath hitched. The discovery felt like unearthing a secret that had been waiting just for her. She set the floorboard aside carefully and knelt before the chest, brushing away layers of dirt. The lock was old and corroded, but not fully sealed. With a tentative tug, the lid creaked open, revealing a trove of forgotten artifacts inside. Inside the chest were objects that seemed to whisper stories of a life long past. A bundle of yellowed letters tied with a faded ribbon, leather-bound journals with cracked spines, and a collection of brittle photographs, their edges curling with age. Nestled among these were peculiar items: a delicate pocket watch, a tarnished pair of spectacles, and a small leather pouch containing what looked like dried seeds. The air inside the chest carried the faint scent of earth and time, as if the past itself had been trapped within. As Emily carefully lifted the journals, a wave of emotions washed over her: wonder, awe, and a deep sense of connection. She imagined the person who had hidden these treasures beneath the floor, perhaps seeking to preserve memories in a world that had moved on without them. The shack, once a forgotten relic, was now a vessel of history, and Emily found herself drawn into the life of its previous occupant. Her mind drifted back to the months before, when life had spun wildly out of control. She had been an artist then, a painter with dreams too big for her small apartment. The breakup with Michael had shattered more than just her heart. It had left her adrift, both emotionally and financially vulnerable. The eviction notice had been the final blow, stripping away the fragile stability she had clung to. But in this chest, buried beneath layers of dust, Emily sensed a story waiting to be told, one that might illuminate her own path forward. Determined to learn more, she took the chest outside, setting it gently on the porch where the morning light could illuminate its contents. The neighborhood buzzed quietly around her: Mrs. Delaney tending her garden, the distant hum of children's laughter, and the occasional rumble of a passing car. Emily sat cross-legged, carefully untying the ribbon that bound the letters. The paper was brittle, the ink faded to a soft sepia, but the words still held power. The letters spoke of a woman named Grace Miller, a botanist who had lived in the shack nearly a century ago. Grace's words revealed a passion for plants and a dedication to helping local farmers thrive through innovative cultivation methods. Emily traced the delicate handwriting, feeling the weight of a legacy that had been buried along with the chest. The journals expanded on Grace's work, filled with detailed notes, sketches of rare plants, and observations about the changing seasons. Among the photographs was a portrait of Grace herself, a stern but kind-faced woman with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the earth. Emily studied the image, imagining the life Grace must have led, the challenges she faced in a time when women's contributions to science were often dismissed or ignored. The seeds in the pouch, Emily realized, might be remnants of Grace's botanical experiments, tangible link to a forgotten past. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Emily's phone buzzed quietly. It was a message from Mr. Jenkins, the hardware store owner, offering to lend her some gardening tools. She smiled, grateful for the small kindness in a world that often felt indifferent. But her thoughts were consumed by Grace's story, the discovery that had transformed the shack from a symbol of despair into a beacon of hope. That evening, after a simple meal of soup warmed over a small stove, Emily sat by the single window, reading through Grace's journals by the flickering light of a kerosene lamp. The shack seemed to breathe with her, the walls holding the echoes of a life that had once flourished here. Grace's words painted vivid pictures of fields and gardens, of seasons marked not by calendars, but by blooms and harvests. Emily felt a kinship with this woman who had fought against the odds, whose quiet determination had left a mark on the world, even if it had gone unrecognized. In the stillness, the baby kicked again, a gentle reminder of the future unfolding within her. Emily's resolve deepened. She would not let this story fade into obscurity. The shack was no longer just a shelter. It was a bridge between past and present, a repository of dreams, both lost and found. The next morning, Emily rose before dawn, the journals and letters packed carefully into a worn satchel. She knew she needed help to understand Grace's work fully, to uncover the truth behind the woman's contributions and the impact she might have had on the community. Her first step was to reach out to the local university, where a professor of botany named Dr. Helen Monroe was known for her research into historical agricultural practices. With a mix of nervous anticipation and determination, Emily drafted an email, summarizing her discovery and requesting a meeting. Writing felt like a lifeline, a way to connect the threads of the past with the possibilities of the future. As she pressed send, a weight lifted, a small but significant step toward bringing Grace's story into the light. Returning to the shack, Emily felt the eyes of the neighborhood upon her once more. But this time the looks were tinged with curiosity rather than scorn. The chest beneath the floorboards had changed everything. It had given her a purpose beyond survival, a mission to honor the legacy of a woman who had once dreamed in this very place. Emily looked around the room, now filled with the quiet promise of discovery. The shack creaked softly, as if acknowledging the new chapter beginning within its walls. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the seeds of hope, resilience, and the unyielding spirit of women past and present, intertwined in a shared story, waiting to be told. The morning air was crisp as Emily stepped out onto the porch, the satchel containing Grace Miller's journals and letters slung carefully over her shoulder. The discovery, beneath the floorboards, had ignited something within her, a spark of purpose that kept her moving forward despite the cold and the skepticism that still lingered in Brooksville's rundown streets. Today, she was determined to find the key to unlocking the chest she had found, the final link to the secrets it might still hold. The chest had been stubbornly locked, the rusted padlock refusing to yield to her gentle attempts with kitchen knives and improvised tools. The key, Emily suspected, was hidden somewhere nearby, or perhaps long lost to time. She began her search in earnest, carefully examining every corner of the shack, lifting loose floorboards, peering into dark nooks, and sifting through piles of debris that had accumulated over decades. Hours passed with no luck, but she refused to give up. Late in the afternoon, a knock at the door startled her from her search. She opened it to find Mr. Thompson standing hesitantly on the porch, his rugged face creased with a mixture of curiosity and concern. The local handyman was known for his gruff demeanor, but beneath it lay a reluctant kindness that Emily had come to appreciate. "Thought I'd stop by and see how you're holding up," he said, glancing around at the peeling walls and scattered tools. "Looks like you've been busy." Emily smiled, grateful for the company. "I've been trying to find the key to this chest," she admitted, holding up the rusted lock. "It's locked tight, but I can't give up. There might be something important inside." Mr. Thompson examined the lock thoughtfully. "I've got an old toolbox in my van. Maybe I can help. Together, they walked down the cracked sidewalk to his battered truck, parked a few houses away. He rummaged through the toolbox, pulling out a set of pliers, a small hammer, and a screwdriver. Back in the shack, he crouched beside the chest, his hands steady and sure as he worked on the lock. The metal groaned under the pressure, but after several tense moments, there was a satisfying click. The lock gave way. Emily's breath caught as Mr. Thompson lifted the lid, revealing the contents within. Inside lay more journals, carefully wrapped bundles of letters, and a stack of faded photographs. But what caught her eye was a small leather pouch, tied with a ribbon, tucked beneath the papers. She reached inside and found a delicate key, its surface worn smooth by time. "This must be the key to another lock," she whispered, holding it up to the light. Mr. Thompson nodded. "Looks like it. You think there's another chest around here?" Emily's eyes scanned the floorboards again, and then she noticed it. A faint outline in the wooden wall, almost invisible beneath layers of dust and paint. Her fingers traced the edges of a hidden compartment, and with a little effort, the panel gave way, revealing a narrow cavity carved into the wall. Inside was a small wooden box, locked tight with a tiny keyhole. Heart pounding, Emily slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. The box opened to reveal a collection of delicate botanical sketches, pressed flowers, and detailed notes written in Grace Miller's elegant handwriting. The pages were filled with observations about rare plants, methods for cultivating seeds, and experiments designed to improve soil quality for struggling farmers in the region. Each sketch was a work of art, capturing the intricate beauty of leaves and blossoms with painstaking accuracy. Emily's fingers trembled as she absorbed the significance of the find. Grace Miller had been more than a reclusive botanist. She was a visionary, a woman ahead of her time whose work had been hidden away, waiting to be rediscovered. Over the next few days, Emily devoted herself to renovating the shack, cleaning and repairing as best she could with the limited resources at her disposal. Mr. Thompson stopped by frequently, offering his expertise and tools, and despite his initial doubts, he had become an unexpected ally in her mission. Together, they patched holes in the roof, reinforced weakened beams, and sealed drafts that had chilled the shack through countless winters. Neighbors began to take notice, not with the sneers and whispers that had greeted her arrival, but with cautious curiosity. A few stopped to ask questions, their skepticism giving way to admiration as they witnessed Emily's determination and the transformation of the once derelict shack into a place of potential. One afternoon, as Emily sorted through Grace's journals, she received an email response from Dr. Helen Monroe, the botany professor she had contacted. The message was encouraging. Dr. Monroe expressed interest in meeting Emily to discuss Grace Miller's work and offered to visit Brooksville to examine the documents firsthand. The prospect of professional validation filled Emily with hope. Grace's story, once buried beneath layers of dust and doubt, was beginning to emerge into the light. But with that hope came new worries. How would the community react to this newfound legacy? Would anyone care enough to protect it? Determined to find answers, Emily prepared for Dr. Monroe's visit by organizing the journals and sketches, creating a small workspace in the shack's corner where they could review the materials together. The shack, once a symbol of Emily's struggle, was becoming a hub of discovery, a place where history and present converged. As the day of the professor's arrival approached, Emily's belly grew heavier, the baby inside her reminding her of the urgency to create a safe, stable environment. The challenges ahead were daunting, but she felt buoyed by the support she was gathering. From Mr. Thompson, from Dr. Monroe, and from the faint but growing interest of the neighborhood. One evening, while working by lamplight, Emily heard the creak of the front door and looked up to see Mr. Thompson entering, carrying a box of supplies. "Thought you might need these," he said gruffly, setting them down. "I've been thinking about that garden you mentioned. If Grace was growing rare plants, maybe we can start small, some seeds, some soil." Emily's eyes shone with gratitude. "That would be amazing. It feels like we're not just fixing a shack, we're planting something new." Together, they began to plan a modest garden in the overgrown yard, envisioning rows of vegetables and flowers that could one day bloom under Emily's care and the memory of Grace Miller's legacy. Despite the physical exhaustion that came with pregnancy and renovation, Emily found renewed strength in these small acts of creation. Each nail hammered, each seed planted, was an affirmation of her resolve to turn the shack into a home, a place where history was honored and new life could flourish. But the road ahead was uncertain. The shack still lacked basic amenities, and Emily's resources were stretched thin. She knew that skepticism and hardship were far from over, and the weight of impending motherhood pressed heavily on her spirit. Yet, as she stood on the porch one morning, watching the first tentative shoots of green break through the cracked soil, Emily felt a quiet certainty. The shack was no longer just a shelter against the world. It was a canvas for hope, a testament to resilience, and a beacon for the future she was determined to build for herself and her child. The journey was just beginning, but Emily was ready to face whatever came next with courage and unwavering determination. The first night Emily spent in the shack after weeks of labor felt like a fragile victory. The air inside was still tinged with the scent of damp wood and dust, but now mingled with the faint aroma of fresh paint and the earthy smell of soil brought in from the small garden patch she and Mr. Thompson had begun to cultivate. She sat on a worn blanket near the window, the kerosene lamp casting soft shadows on the walls, illuminating the journals and letters spread before her like fragments of a hidden life. The baby moved gently beneath her hand, a rhythmic reminder of the future she was nurturing. Outside, the wind whispered through the bare branches, carrying the quiet sounds of the neighborhood settling into night. The shack creaked softly, as if sighing in relief to be inhabited after so many years of solitude. As Emily opened the chest once more, her fingers traced the edges of the old journals, their fragile pages filled with Grace Miller's meticulous handwriting. Each entry detailed not only botanical observations, but also personal reflections, a window into a woman who had lived with passion and purpose, despite the constraints of her time. Emily felt a kinship growing between them, two women separated by a century, yet connected by resilience. Among the items in the chest, Emily found a small collection of rare seeds and gardening tools carefully wrapped in oilcloth. The seeds were preserved with care, some labeled in elegant script, others marked with simple symbols. It was a treasure trove for a botanist, and for Emily, it was a symbol of hope, a tangible link to Grace's legacy and a foundation for rebuilding both the garden and her own life. The next morning, Emily resolved to learn everything she could about Grace Miller. She reached out to Dr. Helen Monroe, whose enthusiasm for the discovery had only grown since their initial correspondence. With the professor's visit scheduled for the following week, Emily began organizing the journals and seeds, preparing to share the story that had captivated her. In the days that followed, Emily found herself absorbed not only in the physical work of renovating the shack, but also in unraveling the story embedded within its walls. The journals revealed that Grace had been a pioneering botanist, dedicated to developing rare plant species that could thrive in Brooksville's challenging soil and climate. Her work had been aimed at aiding local farmers, many of whom struggled to sustain their livelihoods. Emily was fascinated by the detailed sketches in the journals, delicate drawings of leaves, flowers, and roots, that captured the intricate beauty of nature. Grace's notes described experiments with soil enrichment, crop rotation, and seed cultivation, reflecting a deep understanding of ecological balance. Yet, despite her contributions, it seemed Grace's work had never been formally recognized or documented beyond her private writings. This realization struck Emily deeply. She saw parallels between Grace's story and her own. Women striving to make a difference, their efforts overlooked or dismissed by the wider world. The shack, once a symbol of neglect, was now a vessel carrying a powerful narrative of perseverance and unacknowledged brilliance. Word of Emily's discovery began to spread quietly through the neighborhood. Some stopped by out of curiosity, others out of respect, offering small gestures of support, a bag of soil, a few packets of seeds, a cup of coffee. Mr. Thompson remained a steadfast presence, lending his skills and encouragement, while Emily's faith in the possibility of transformation grew stronger. One afternoon, as Emily tended to the small garden patch, she noticed a group of local farmers gathering near the edge of the property, their faces weathered and uncertain. She approached cautiously, unsure how they would respond to her efforts. "Miss Carter?" one of the men called out, his voice rough but not unkind. "We heard you've been digging up old stories and planting new things here. Thought we'd take a look." Emily smiled warmly. "I'm restoring the shack and learning about Grace Miller, who worked to help farmers with her plants. I want to continue her work in any way I can." The men exchanged glances, then nodded slowly. "We could use all the help we can get," another said. "If those seeds really grow like you say, maybe there's hope yet." Encouraged by their openness, Emily invited them to join her in the garden. Over the coming weeks, they shared knowledge, stories, and labor, transforming the neglected plot into a place of renewal. The garden became a living testament to Grace's legacy and a symbol of community resilience. As Emily pored over the journals one evening, she found a passage that resonated deeply. "To nurture the earth is to nurture life itself, and in that care lies the power to heal and grow." The words echoed in her mind, a mantra for the journey she was undertaking. The shack, once a hollow shell, was now filled with the sounds of life. Rustling pages, whispered conversations, and the steady growth of green shoots pushing through the soil. Emily felt a profound sense of purpose, her connection to Grace's story fueling her determination to create a future where both their legacies could flourish. With Dr. Monroe's visit imminent, Emily prepared to share the fruits of her discovery, hopeful that the professor's expertise would bring wider recognition to Grace's work. The shack had become more than a refuge. It was a beacon of history, hope, and the enduring strength of women who dared to dream beyond their circumstances. As night fell, Emily sat by the window, the baby stirring softly within her. She gazed out at the garden, where the first blooms of spring promised new beginnings. In the quiet, she whispered a silent vow to honor the past, nurture the present, and build a legacy that would endure for generations to come. The sun filtered softly through the lace curtains as Emily sat at the small wooden table, a stack of journals and letters spread before her like fragments of a hidden past. Dr. Helen Monroe's visit had come and gone, leaving behind a swirl of excitement and validation that Emily had scarcely dared to hope for. The professor's expertise had shed new light on Grace Miller's pioneering work, and together they had begun piecing together a narrative long buried beneath time and neglect. Dr. Monroe had been struck by the meticulous detail in Grace's botanical sketches and notes, recognizing the significance of her experiments in rare plant cultivation and soil improvement. Grace was ahead of her time, the professor had said during one of their meetings in the cramped shack. Her work could have transformed local agriculture decades ago if only it had been shared and supported. Emily nodded, her fingers tracing the delicate lines of a plant drawing. The realization that Grace's contributions had been overlooked stirred a mixture of admiration and indignation within her. She thought of the countless women whose achievements had been erased or ignored, their legacies swallowed by history's shadows. Together, Emily and Dr. Monroe began documenting Grace's findings, preparing to present them to local agricultural societies and historical organizations. The process was painstaking, deciphering faded handwriting, cross-referencing botanical terms, and contextualizing Grace's work within the broader scientific landscape of her era. But each discovery felt like a small victory, a reclamation of a story that deserved to be told. Emily also reached out to the community, sharing Grace's journals and sketches with local farmers and residents. The response was cautiously optimistic. Many were intrigued by the possibility that a forgotten botanist from their own neighborhood had developed techniques that could improve their crops and livelihoods. Some brought their own stories of hardship and resilience, weaving their narratives into the tapestry Emily was helping to revive. One afternoon, as Emily walked through the garden she and Mr. Thompson had nurtured from barren soil, she felt a surge of hope. The once neglected patch now bloomed with vibrant greens and early blossoms, a living testament to Grace's legacy and the community's enduring spirit. She paused to examine a cluster of rare seeds recently propagated, their delicate leaves unfurling toward the sun. But the path was not without obstacles. Emily encountered resistance from some local officials and developers who viewed the shack and surrounding land as prime targets for commercial development. They dismissed Grace's work as a quaint relic, irrelevant to modern needs. Emily's efforts to preserve the site and promote the botanical legacy met with skepticism and bureaucracy. Undeterred, Emily enlisted Dr. Monroe's help to advocate for official recognition of Grace Miller's contributions. Together, they prepared detailed reports and presentations, emphasizing the historical and scientific importance of the discovery. They reached out to local media, hoping to generate public interest and support. Amid these efforts, Emily's personal life unfolded with its own challenges and joys. Her pregnancy advanced steadily, bringing moments of both vulnerability and strength. The shack, once a symbol of uncertainty, had become a sanctuary where she could prepare for motherhood surrounded by history and hope. One evening, as Emily sat by the window with her hand resting on her belly, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate decision to buy a dilapidated shack to the discovery of Grace Miller's hidden legacy, her life had been transformed by resilience and unexpected connections. The journals revealed more than botanical knowledge. They painted a portrait of a woman who had quietly defied societal constraints, dedicating herself to the betterment of her community through science and care. Grace's story resonated deeply with Emily, inspiring her to continue the work of honoring and preserving this forgotten chapter of history. In the weeks that followed, Emily and Dr. Monroe organized a small community gathering at the shack, inviting neighbors, local historians, and farmers to learn about Grace's contributions. The event was modest but heartfelt, filled with shared stories and newfound appreciation. For many, it was the first time they recognized the rich history nestled within their own neighborhood. As the sun set over Brooksville, casting a warm glow on the shack's weathered walls, Emily felt a profound sense of purpose. The journey ahead remained uncertain, fraught with challenges both practical and political. But the seeds of change had been planted. With her daughter's impending arrival and the blossoming garden outside, Emily embraced the intertwined legacies of past and future. Grace Miller's pioneering spirit had found a new champion in her, and together they would nurture a story of resilience, recognition, and renewal that would inspire generations to come. The news of Emily's discovery and her efforts to preserve Grace Miller's legacy rippled quietly through Brooksville, stirring a mix of admiration and unease. While some neighbors began to rally around the cause, offering support and encouragement, a darker undercurrent emerged from the shadows. Developers with eyes on the shack's land and local officials eager to capitalize on the area's potential growth saw Emily's project as a hindrance, an inconvenient obstacle to progress and profit. One crisp morning, as Emily stepped outside to tend the garden, she noticed a group of unfamiliar faces gathered near the edge of the property. Men in suits with clipboards and stern expressions moved with purpose, inspecting the grounds and taking photographs. Their presence was unsettling, a stark contrast to the quiet resilience that had begun to define the shack's revival. Emily approached cautiously, her heart pounding with a mixture of fear and defiance. "Can I help you?" she called out. A man in a sharply pressed jacket turned to her, his smile polite but unyielding. "We're representatives from Brooksville Development Corp. We've been authorized to acquire this land for a new commercial project. I'm afraid your activities here are unauthorized." Emily's stomach tightened. "This land belongs to me. I bought the shack legally, and I'm restoring it to honor a local botanist's legacy." The man's smile faltered. "I'm sure you mean well, but the city has plans for this area. Its prime real estate and development is inevitable. You'd be wise to consider selling before things get complicated." Word of the developer's intentions spread quickly, igniting a wave of concern among the community. Some neighbors, swayed by promises of economic growth and jobs, urged Emily to accept the offer and move on. Others, inspired by her determination, stood firm in their support. Emily found herself at a crossroads. The shack, her sanctuary and symbol of hope, was under threat. The journals and seeds that bore Grace Miller's memory were in danger of being lost once again, buried beneath concrete and profit. Determined not to surrender. Without a fight, Emily reached out to Dr. Helen Monroe and Mr. Thompson. Together, they began strategizing ways to protect the shack and its historical significance. Dr. Monroe advised Emily to seek official historical designation for the property, a move that could provide legal protection against redevelopment. The process was daunting. Applications had to be filed, documents compiled, and evidence presented to local authorities. Emily spent long nights gathering materials, writing letters, and rallying community members to voice their support. The shack became a focal point for neighborhood meetings, where stories of Grace Miller's contributions and the importance of preserving local history were shared passionately. But resistance came swiftly and forcefully. One evening, Emily returned home to find the garden gates vandalized, plants uprooted, and several pages from Grace's journals torn and scattered. The sight was a brutal reminder of the stakes involved, a silent warning that her fight was far from over. Fear mingled with resolve as Emily locked the shack's door behind her, clutching the remaining journals to her chest. The baby inside her kicked softly, a fragile heartbeat against the turmoil outside. She refused to let threats and intimidation silence the story that had breathed new life into her world. With renewed determination, Emily organized a press conference, inviting local media to hear the story of Grace Miller and the fight to preserve her legacy. Dr. Monroe stood beside her, lending credibility and urgency to their cause. Mr. Thompson shared his first-hand experiences, emphasizing the community's connection to the land and the importance of honoring its history. The event drew attention beyond Brooksville, sparking conversations about the value of preserving local heritage in the face of rapid development. Supporters rallied, petitions circulated, and voices once quiet found strength in numbers. Yet the tension remained palpable. Emily received anonymous threats, warning her to abandon the fight or face consequences. The shack, her refuge and symbol of hope, was no longer just a building, it had become a battleground. Despite the challenges, Emily found solace in small victories. Neighbors who had once doubted now offered help, bringing tools, supplies, and encouragement. The garden, though scarred, began to heal. And within the shack's walls, Grace Miller's story continued to inspire resilience and courage. As the days grew shorter and the baby's arrival drew near, Emily balanced her growing fears with a fierce hope. The fight to protect the shack was more than a personal struggle. It was a stand for history, community, and the belief that some stories were worth preserving at all costs. One chilly evening, as Emily sat by the window, she looked out over the garden, its battered but persistent greenery silhouetted against the fading light. The journey ahead was uncertain, the obstacles formidable, but she was not alone. With the legacy of Grace Miller guiding her and the support of those who believed in her, Emily steeled herself for the battles to come. The shack stood as a testament, not just to the past, but to the enduring power of hope, determination, and the unyielding fight to protect what matters most. The dawn was heavy with a gray mist that clung to the cracked sidewalks of Brooksville as Emily approached the shack, her breath visible in the cold air. The garden gate hung askew, its hinges twisted from the night's violence. Her heart pounded, a mix of dread and determination tightening in her chest. The journals, the fragile pieces of Grace Miller's legacy, had been stolen. The pages she had so carefully protected were gone. She sank to her knees amidst the scattered debris, crushed petals and torn paper swirling in the chill breeze. The weight of the loss pressed down on her, but beneath the sorrow, a fierce resolve began to take shape. This was no longer just about preserving history. It was a fight for justice. Mr. Thompson arrived moments later, his face grim as he surveyed the damage. "They wanted to scare you off," he muttered, picking up a torn page from the dirt. "But you're not the kind to back down." Emily shook her head, wiping tears that had escaped unbidden. "No, this only makes me fight harder." Together, they began gathering the remnants, salvaging what they could. The missing journals left a gaping hole in the story, but Emily refused to let the theft silence Grace's voice. She reached out to Dr. Helen Monroe, who immediately offered her support, promising to help reconstruct the lost documents from her own notes and research. The community's response was swift and resolute. News of the break-in spread, sparking outrage and solidarity. Neighbors who had once been skeptical now stood beside Emily, organizing patrols and offering to safeguard the shack. Local activists joined the cause, framing the incident as an attack not just on a building, but on the heritage and identity of Brooksville itself. Emily's days became a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and planning. With Dr. Monroe's expertise and the community's backing, they launched a campaign to expose the developers' aggressive tactics and to push for official protections for the shack and its grounds. Legal counsel was sought to challenge any attempts to seize the property unlawfully. Amid the chaos, Emily found moments of quiet strength. She continued nurturing the garden, tending to the fragile seedlings that had survived the vandalism. Each sprout was a symbol of resilience, a living testament to Grace's work and to the community's unwavering spirit. One afternoon, as Emily sorted through newly recovered documents and pieced together fragments of Grace's writings, Mr. Thompson knocked on the door, holding a file thick with photographs and letters. "Found these in the town archives," he said. "More proof of Grace's impact." Emily's eyes lit up as she examined the materials. Letters from local farmers praising Grace's assistance, newspaper clippings hinting at her innovative methods, and even a faded photograph of Grace speaking at a small community gathering. The evidence was mounting, painting a vivid picture of a woman whose contributions had been quietly transformative. Buoyed by these discoveries, Emily and Dr. Monroe prepared to present their case to the city council, hoping to secure historical landmark status for the shack. The battle was far from over, but they now wielded facts and community support as weapons against the forces threatening to erase Grace's legacy. As the council meeting approached, tension filled the air. Emily's belly had grown heavy with the approaching birth, but she refused to step back. This fight was for her child, for the generations to come, and for the memory of a woman who had dared to dream. The night before the hearing, Emily sat by the window, the journals open before her, the kerosene lamp flickering gently. Outside, the garden lay quiet, the first stars shimmering faintly through the gathering clouds. She felt the baby stir, a soft kick against her palm, grounding her in the present even as her mind raced with the challenges ahead. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Monroe. "We're ready. Tomorrow, we make history." Emily's fingers trembled as she typed a reply. "For Grace, for all of us." As dawn broke over Brooksville, Emily steeled herself for the confrontation. The shack, battered but unbroken, stood as a symbol of resilience and hope. Not just for her, but for an entire community determined to honor its past and protect its future. The fight was far from over, but together, they would ensure that Grace Miller's story would not be lost again. The morning sun was gentle as it poured through the cracked window panes of the shack, casting long shadows across the worn floorboards. Emily sat in a worn rocking chair, her hands resting lightly on her swollen belly, feeling the steady movements of the life growing inside her. Outside, the garden she had tended with such care blossomed in modest splendor. Green shoots and delicate flowers pushing through the soil, reborn from the scars of neglect and vandalism. The community's efforts had borne fruit. After a tense and heartfelt meeting with the city council, the shack was officially designated a historical landmark. Its significance recognized not only for its architectural heritage, but as the home and workspace of Grace Miller, a pioneering botanist whose contributions had finally been brought to light. The victory was sweet, a testament to the resilience of those who refused to let the past be forgotten. Emily's relief was tempered by the exhaustion that came with the final weeks of pregnancy. Yet, as she cradled her belly, she felt a profound connection to the generations of women who had fought against erasure and invisibility. Naming her child after Grace felt not only fitting but necessary, a way to carry forward a legacy of courage and innovation. The birth was a quiet, tender moment in the small hospital room, far removed from the turmoil that had surrounded the shack. Emily held her daughter close, tears of joy and exhaustion mingling as she whispered the name she had chosen. Grace. The child's tiny fingers curled around her mother's, a new beginning born from the struggles and triumphs of the past. Back at the shack, plans were underway to transform the space into a museum and community center dedicated to Grace Miller's life and work. Volunteers from the neighborhood and university students rallied to restore the building, catalog artifacts, and design exhibits that would educate and inspire visitors. The garden became a living classroom where children learned about botany, sustainability, and the power of perseverance. Emily found purpose in this new chapter, balancing motherhood with her role as caretaker of Grace's legacy. The shack, once a symbol of hardship, had become a beacon of hope and learning, a place where history was not only preserved but celebrated. Community events brought neighbors together, weaving a tapestry of shared stories and renewed pride. Local farmers incorporated Grace's cultivation techniques, seeing tangible improvements in their crops. The foundation established in Grace's name funded scholarships and research, ensuring that her pioneering spirit would continue to influence future generations. Emily often stood on the porch of the shack, watching her daughter play among the flowers and listening to the laughter that filled the air. The journey had been arduous, marked by loss and resistance, but the fruits of their labor were undeniable. In quiet moments, Emily reflected on the intertwining threads of past and present. The shack's weathered walls holding stories of struggle, discovery, and renewal. Grace Miller's voice, once silenced by time, now resonated loudly, inspiring all who came to learn. As the seasons turned, the museum and garden flourished, becoming a sanctuary of knowledge and resilience. Emily's life was forever changed, shaped by the legacy she had uncovered and the future she was helping to build. With her daughter by her side, she faced each day with hope and determination, honoring the past while nurturing a brighter tomorrow. The shack stood as a testament, not just to Grace Miller's forgotten contributions, but to the enduring power of courage, community, and the unyielding spirit of women who dared to leave their mark on history. The shack, once overlooked and weathered by time, now stood proudly at the heart of the community. Its faded wooden exterior had been carefully restored, preserving the marks of history while welcoming new life. The transformation was more than physical. It symbolized the renewed spirit of Brooksville, a neighborhood that had once whispered doubts, but now echoed with hope. Emily watched as visitors streamed through the doors of the Elizabeth Frances Jones Innovation Museum, a name chosen to honor the pioneering woman whose story had sparked a movement. Children clustered around displays of botanical sketches and antique gardening tools, their eyes wide with curiosity. Elderly residents shared stories of the neighborhood's past, some shedding tears at the recognition finally given to Grace Miller's work. The museum had become a gathering place, a crossroads where history met the present. Local schools organized field trips, and university students volunteered to guide tours, sharing the narratives of perseverance and innovation that had been buried for so long. Emily found joy in seeing her daughter, Grace, toddle among the exhibits, her laughter mingling with the hum of discovery. A foundation had been established to protect Grace Miller's legacy and promote botanical research, funded by donations from grateful neighbors, educational grants, and a growing network of supporters. The foundation sponsored scholarships for young women pursuing science, a living tribute to Grace's trailblazing spirit. Emily's days were filled with purpose, balancing motherhood with her role as a curator and advocate. The shack's modest rooms had been transformed into galleries and classrooms, where visitors explored the intersection of science, history, and community resilience. The garden outside bloomed in vibrant colors, maintained by volunteers who saw it as a living extension of Grace's work. Brooksville itself began to change. The once dismissive neighbors now spoke with pride about the museum and its significance. Local businesses thrived as visitors arrived, drawn by the story of a woman who had dared to dream and a community that had rallied to preserve her memory. Emily often stood on the museum's porch, watching the sun set over the neighborhood. She reflected on the journey, from the desperate purchase of a dilapidated shack to the creation of a beacon that inspired so many. The struggles, the threats, the setbacks, all had led to this moment of triumph. Her daughter, Grace, ran toward her, clutching a wildflower picked from the garden. Emily knelt to embrace her, feeling the weight of history and hope entwined in that small hand. She saw in her child the promise of a future shaped by courage and recognition. The intertwined stories of Emily and Grace Miller had woven a legacy that reached beyond Brooksville, touching lives and inspiring change. Their shared journey was a testament to resilience, the power of community, and the importance of honoring those whose contributions have too long been forgotten. As twilight deepened, Emily whispered a silent vow to continue nurturing this legacy, to champion the stories that need telling, and to ensure that the shack remained a sanctuary of discovery for generations to come. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the Elizabeth Frances Jones Innovation Museum, its weathered walls now vibrant with fresh paint and blooming vines. The garden outside flourished, a living mosaic of colors and scents, tended by hands young and old who understood the legacy they were nurturing. Children's laughter echoed through the air, mingling with the soft rustle of leaves and the gentle hum of visitors exploring the exhibits inside. Emily stood near the entrance, her eyes following her daughter Grace as she chased butterflies among the flower beds, her small hands reaching out with innocent wonder. The child's presence was a living testament to the journey that had begun in desperation and uncertainty, now blossoming into hope and purpose. The museum had become a beacon, not only preserving the memory of a forgotten botanist, but inspiring a community to embrace its history and potential. Emily had transformed the shack into a sanctuary of learning and resilience, a place where stories of courage and innovation were celebrated and passed on. Visitors from across the region came to walk the halls filled with Grace Miller's journals, sketches, and tools. Artifacts that spoke of a woman who had fought against the constraints of her time to make a difference. Exhibits told the intertwined stories of Emily and Grace, two women separated by decades, yet united by strength and vision. Local schools integrated the museum's programs into their curriculum, teaching children about botany, history, and the importance of perseverance. The garden served as an outdoor classroom, where seedlings grew alongside dreams, tended with care and curiosity. Emily's life had settled into a rhythm that balanced motherhood with stewardship. The foundation established in Grace's name funded scholarships for young women pursuing science, ensuring that the spirit of discovery and determination lived on. Community events celebrated milestones, weaving a tapestry of shared pride and collective memory. On quiet evenings, Emily often found herself on the porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon, casting long shadows over the neighborhood. The shack, once a symbol of struggle and neglect, now stood as a monument to renewal and hope. Her thoughts drifted to the battles fought, the eviction notice, the threats, the vandalism, all trials that had tested her resolve. Yet, each challenge had forged a deeper commitment to honor the past and build a future where stories like Grace's would never again be forgotten. Grace toddled to her side, clutching a small flower, her eyes bright with innocence and curiosity. Emily smiled, lifting her daughter into her arms and whispering promises of a life filled with opportunity and love. Together, they looked out over the garden, the museum, and the community that had come alive around them. The legacy they shared was more than bricks and mortar or faded pages. It was a living testament to the power of courage, resilience, and the unwavering belief that every voice deserves to be heard. As night settled softly over Brooksville, Emily felt a profound sense of peace. The shack's story was no longer one of abandonment, but of transformation, a beacon lighting the way for future generations to discover their own paths, inspired by the intertwined journeys of two remarkable women. In the quiet embrace of the evening, with her daughter nestled close, Emily knew that the past was honored, the present was cherished, and the future held limitless promise. The museum stood ready to welcome all who sought inspiration, a sanctuary where stories of perseverance and hope would continue to bloom for years to come.